Give us a thumbs up. Good to go. All right, good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody. Thanks for agreeing to the joint session. And with that, I think you guys scheduled to call it in order first.
Ms. Monroe, if you'd like to call, or sorry, how do you guys do the invocation?
Well, I was just going to let you call to order, then you do the invocation.
Okay. We'll call the meeting to order. It is 5:07. The Johnstown, or the special and joint meeting of the Johnstown City Council and Johnstown-Monroe Board of Education for Monday, January 27th, 2025. Here.
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 Present.
Here. Here.
Do you have someone to do that? No. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We can call special. We just got to call all the roll. We can call the roll for the school board.
Mr. Swager?
Here.
Mrs. Davis? Here. Mr. Benton?
Here.
Mrs. Boer? Here. Mrs. Thomas? Here.
And the reading of the notice, please.
Sure. This is a special and joint meeting of Johnstown City Council and the Johnstown-Monroe Board of Education, which is held at 5 p.m. on Monday, January 27th, for the consideration of entering into a lease and purchase contract with the City of Johnstown, as well as for the purpose of strategic planning. This meeting is held in the Media Center of Johnstown Middle School, 401 South Oregon Street, Johnstown. We keep a recording of each meeting of the board as administrative aid and shall be preserved as documents of the board.
Thank you.
We have received the agenda. Is there any changes or alterations that council would like to make to the agenda that we've received? Hearing none, what is the will of council?
Make a motion to approve the agenda as written.
No second.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
And for the school, any additions or deletions to the agenda? I get a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer? Yes. Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis? Yes. Mrs. Thomas? Yes.
Do we have any citizens here tonight that would like to make any comments on matters not on the agenda? Mr. Monroe, did you receive anything? Thank you.
And same for the Board of Education. Any public remarks?
No one signed up.
Hearing none. Thank you.
For discussion?
Yep.
Okay. Again, thank you for being here. We've done some planning and preparation for today. So what I thought would be good is if we can level set, where we are as a school district and a city and a community, of course, as a whole. Many of you have been in my office, and we have a whiteboard, a long horizontal whiteboard that has some information about our current enrollment and our growth plans. And what we did is we reduced that to some slides, if you can put those up. In front of you, though, you have a piece of paper that looks like this, and that'll contain all of the information we're going to go through. Again, I know you've seen some of this, but I thought it would be good just to kind of level set where we are with everything. I want to thank Mr. Busenberg and Mr. McDonald for helping with this presentation. They did a nice job. I'm going to reduce to written format, so probably easier for you to look at the paper, but the people are watching as they're streaming can at least see the information we're going through. So just want to talk about where we are and what our future planning is. So if you look at what you have in that left box right now on your paper, it talks about, it shows we have 4 school buildings and we have the grade configurations in each of those buildings. And then you can see what the building capacity is as it's rated in each of those buildings. So for example, at the intermediate school, we have a building capacity or student capacity of 744 students. That's grades K through 3. You can see how everything else is listed there. And then what we did is we looked at our enrollment, and as you're probably aware enrollment changes, it fluctuates up and down. And when you're dealing with the state of Ohio, they go back and they reconcile data. So let's say, for example, what you see there is as of January 7th, you can go back a few days or maybe a few weeks ahead and you'll say, okay, that number becomes 449 at the high school instead of 447. That's because there's always reconciliation. And if somebody added to the district, we would not have that always documented. Same thing happens if people are absent. We find out they moved, the numbers will change a little bit. I'm always careful to tell people because they see something down the road. It's like the numbers might look a little different, but they're always fluid. But that tells you generally where we are as a school district. So that's 1,596 students, and those are the students who are serving every day in the schools. There's about another 100 students who are in College Credit Plus, some special education, some career tech that are out at C-Tech and not at our high schools. So there's about another 100 students we're responsible for, but the 1,596 are the students who are actually in our schools right now. And then you can see the next column is we have some enrollment capacity in each of the buildings, and you can see, and this is all written very linear, of course. So we have the high school, showing 4 grades, 9 through 12. We have 103 spots right now. Now, seldom is like that linear, because when a family moves in, there might be high school, middle school, or elementary, so it changes. And then the last column in that box shows additions and what the district has planned for. If you look, the high school has a current building capacity of 550 students, and we have the 6 classroom addition that's going on to the building on a linear basis. We usually look at about 25 students a class. That can fluctuate a little bit in the high school, more so in other grades, but that would take the building capacity to 700. If you look at the middle school, there's an X through that in grades 6 through 8 because there's no ability to add on to that building. Same thing with the intermediate. We've already had a nice renovation of that building and some upgrades, so that building is maxed out. The elementary school is your next one, and it was actually built that there could be a 100 student addition to that, or 4 classrooms. You'll see lines through that because we really don't think that actually works under this current model. It's a nice option to have, perhaps, but the reason why that's a problem is because it would actually create a larger school, and it would actually create a choke point, and I'll go through that later on. So your class size would be too large, and it would just create a bottleneck, if you will. So you can see that our total enrollment, again, that we have a capacity for, if everything follows linear, would be just over almost 2,500 students, just shy of that. Are there any questions about any of that, or does that make sense? I just wanted to level set.
To make sure I understand correctly, you're saying that JUS, because of the choke points, but not any ability to add additional classrooms.
There's technically an ability to do it, and if I remember my math correctly, everything in our model, when I get into the next box, is based on a class size of 350 students, or about there. You'll see 347 and 372. But it's all predicated on a model of, or maxed out about 350 students per grade level. Again, I'm doing this off the top of my head or memory, but I believe if we added the 100 students at the elementary, it takes us to about 423. So that just creates a choke point, because then you're not gonna, how are you going to service 423 students at the next 2 levels? And creates problems. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions, board members? The next box that you have talks about how we would grow the district and what we have planned. And what that does is you see that we have 4 school buildings existing. This would take us to 6 school buildings. And what that would do is it would take us just under 4,600 students. That would be the number of students actually in school that we're servicing every day, not just those we support, maybe at a career tech, like I said, or College Credit Plus or special ed. But that almost triples the size of the school district from our current enrollment. And what you see there is what we would do in order to accommodate almost 4,600 students is we'd have to build a new high school. I'll start at the top there. The new high school we would build larger. We would build the core capacity of that school to 1,400. So that means your hallways, your restrooms, your media centers, cafeteria, lunchroom, everything would be built to 1,400. But in our model, we're starting with classroom space of 1,100. So we would be short some classrooms in there. That's by design, because you typically don't want to spend all your money up front and have empty classrooms, so you can step into it. But you'll notice that we have in there, so you see 1,100 students, if you follow that line over, plus 300, which is your addition. One of the things that we've looked at is possibly a workforce development center as well too. We've had some conversations with businesses on it. So maybe in lieu of putting a wing on the eventual new high school, we might build a separate off-site facility. We've thought about possibly the North Campus for that. I've had some real high-level conversations with some of the businesses. It's a little early yet in the process, but when I talk with some of the major businesses, and we've had some conversations, people are interested about this. And that would probably be something that we would look to, that would be maybe a partnership where we could sell a wing to or we could sell a classroom, and we could have that, sponsored. So there's some models that we think about with that. The nice thing about a workforce development center too is it would allow us to use a school after hours meaningfully. Like if you have staff you need to have upskilled, or you have people who are first generation families, they need some additional training. That's the challenge with public schools, is a lot of times we're using about 6.5, 7 hours a day other than athletics. This would actually put your building into use at a much greater level. So some future planning there, with our high school. And then what that would do, and it's to Mr. Farr's question, is you look at that far right column in that box, every grade level is about 350, and that's where we max out our district. If we get beyond that size, there's another set of conversations that need to occur, and it's not our goal, as we've talked openly. We'd like to be a more managed environment. We've been working closely with the city and our other partners about managing the growth. We'd like to stay, the school board has been very open about this, have one high school, one middle school, and then we'll have some other buildings to fill. If you keep going down through that box, what we would do then is the current high school that would have the addition would eventually become the middle school, and then that would be grades 7 and 8, and that would work out well at 350 students per grade level. That would house 700 students there, so that works out perfect. It gets a little bit challenging when we get to the intermediate and middle school, and if you just set that off to the side, there's some programming things there that I'll look at, that part, those two smaller columns on the right there, and I'll explain that. If you go to the elementary, we have what's currently a K3 building, would serve 2 grade levels, so it could be 2, 3, and grades 2nd and 3rd. And then we would have a new elementary school that be grades K1. Now, we could flip those. We could keep, JES as K1 and put the new elementary school at 2, 3. It doesn't really matter, and this is just to show the model. But if we were to implement all that, then that takes us to 350 students per grade level, and again, it maxes out at just under 4,600 students. And then I'll talk about the different configuration and grades a little bit, just so you have some idea about what we're looking at. We haven't formed a final opinion on these, and again, this is all presented very linear, but it'll not always unfold that way. It'll be, depending on your housing stock, sometimes we may get more in the elementaries and they grow through the district. Sometimes if you have a higher priced housing stock, you'll end up with more middle school, high school age students and less in your elementary. So, any questions about that future growth? Okay, if you look at the smaller boxes on your right there, and they're color coded, we were trying to show in these boxes here just some configuration options. The first one, which is at the bottom of your page, there's sequential. So one of the things that we have organized as a possible option is that all students would go through all grade levels at every building. So for example, in this model, the elementary could be a new elementary would be K1, then you transition to 2, 3, and then you get through grades 4 through 6. Again, we have things to work out between the intermediate and the middle school. There's some things that we need to work through, but that's a very linear model. Some districts do that. Those are things that we'll look at in the future. One of the challenges with that is so many transitions though too, because you're looking at 3 transitions before you get to middle school, and then you have middle school to high school will be another transition. So technically, we're going to have quite a few. Actually, you would have you're going to have intermediate to then middle school, so you're going to have an extra transition there if you look at that. The other model that's in that box above on your sheet, and will be the next slide here. We also play with the concept of parallel schools. We will sometimes hear neighborhood schools, and the idea here is you create cohorts. So you could say, for example, that at the elementary school, current JES, you could still keep it a K3, but about half your students would go there, and then you'd have a cohort, and they would go up to your next building, so you'd have grades 4 through 6. So ostensibly, you would have students together from grades 4 through 6 in 2 different cohorts, as it's outlined there, and then when everyone would come together at the middle school, and then they would continue to mix. So there's pros and cons to either one of those models. Less transitions with the parallel school model, but you also have the segregation of your population. So whether some people are just meeting each other for the first time in middle school. So these are things that we have some concept. There might be some other models or ideas there, but at least we thought that this gives us some things to look at for the future. So, any questions about anything I need to explain more deeply about our planning and modeling? Good. Okay. And then the other thing that we thought we would do, and you have another sheet of paper in front of you, is we presented this first to Monroe Township, and then we did so to the city. But this goes back to late September. I think it's September 26th. It's on there. And wanted to show you some of what our building plans actually are and how things could fit together. So we'll get that pulled up. But it's in front of you right now. And what you have is our auxiliary space here, that multi-purpose space that we're looking to build. If you think about this building, it's really about the same size as our current middle school gymnasium. It's just is a little smaller in its seating, but generally it's about the same size as what you would see there. And then as we were going through this process, there's your first slide should say floor plan A. We talked about a lean-to building or a side building on that. And that building we thought about would serve cheerleading and wrestling, and then also some indoor batting. And on the model, you can see we had a core space, and then we had some optional spaces there too. So this was all part of our planning back in September. And again, I thought we would be good to review that. You can see it's a nice facility though, because not only do we have the gymnasium, but we have some locker rooms in there, we have some restrooms. This would serve athletic needs for the school district, but also would provide some opportunities for the community. Our schedule is so busy with requests for using our facilities, especially the athletic facilities, that this would provide support to the schools, but also be good for the community. If you look at the next page, that is the floor plan B, and it's exactly the same thing. Sorry, I skipped the page because I have it on the north property. You can just go to the third slide. Sorry. And it's the exact same model, but what it shows is the lean-to building on the left side of the building. You're looking at it. So exactly same dimensions. Some of that was interesting for us because one of the options we initially looked at was putting this building on the north property, so we had the left side versus the right side. Any questions about the multi-purpose space and what we have organized there? Your fourth slide, it just shows it on the north property, and this is one of the things that we looked at before. I know this council's seen this. This is the one that shows the lean-to on the left side. It's the same as the Model A, except it just has it on the opposite side. And then as these conversations matured, if you go to your next page, and then the next slide, this is where we started to look at putting, and where we've been spending a lot of our time, is looking at this multi-purpose building on the city's property, and part of the reason why we're here today. Now, the challenge here is that we cannot put the lean-to or the cheerleading and all of the wrestling and the batting. It does not fit on the property because of the property lines. So that's where we've entered into conversations about how do we repurpose, or can we repurpose the current city building, and instead of having it built on the side of the multi-purpose, then could we put it inside of the city building? And that's let us.
Could it go on the backside?
What's that?
Could it go on the backside?
You mean outside of the building or on the back?
Yes, out the back of the building, like on the city property. How?
Yeah, that's one of the things that Sean and I were going to talk about today, is if we had an outcome. I know you have a school liaison committee, and we would like to have a smaller group work on some of these details. I think based on last week, we realized that our lead option of leasing the Monroe Township building isn't going to work in our current plans because it's only offered as a 2-year. And although we were still in discussion about it, we saw somewhere between 5, maybe upwards of 15, although we had some challenges with that far out. But so we need to look at different options. So one of the things we were thinking about is, can we talk about and get some direction from both public bodies today, and then our small group could work. But I'd like to look at every option that's available and start with a B, C, D, and E. If we cannot rent if the city can't rent, which stops our current plan, what other options do we have? Could we build it in a different way. I'm open, and Sean and I were talking to different ideas. Maybe it's time to visit our neighbors again and talk about some options there. And could we pick up a little more land? And, so I know there's going to some of us say that's probably difficult, but I think we need to look at all of our options now and start considering what we want to do. So that slide or that picture shows you just the building without the lean-to. If you turn to the next page, which is the next slide, this isn't pretty, but it's functional. So we had a sketch we tried to put a sketch together at our buildings and grounds supervisor, facilitator, Dave Jenny put this together just quickly. And it kind of shows the layout of it does show the layout of the city building. And if you go to the next slide, or your next picture there, it shows how we could insert the lean-to building, you will, or the space. It's a little smaller, but it would fit inside of the city building. And what you see there's an A and a B model there, and one is parallel with 37, the other one's perpendicular. But you can see there's an option, and this is what we were hoping to achieve, is one of these two models, either, like I said, A or B there, and this would serve as our lean-to building, if you will. So we would have the core new building built, and then we would have the option of having the internal. We'd have to get some space with the city. This was predicated on the city moving the police department to Monroe Township through a lease.
Does the A and B diagram include the needs of your conceptual floor plan dimensions? Are they similar to less than equal?
Yeah, it's a great question. I did this, I'm doing it off the top of my head again. If you looked at when I showed you the lean-to building, the core square footage on that was about 3,600 square feet, I think. And then if we put the optional spaces on it, it took us up just over 7,000 square feet. If you look at both of these options, the A and B in the city, takes us about in the 5,000 square foot range. So, every model has its options, but this would be so much more of an enhancement we have right now, because we're leasing space, with JYA, and they've been great partners to this, but we have a lot of limitations there for our wrestlers and no running water. And so this would provide an opportunity. So yes, we could make that work. I'd have to do the math, but one's a little bigger than the other, but it's about 5,000 square feet. So it kind of hits that middle tier for us. Knowing that this isn't a long-term, like the building would be, obviously a long-term solution, but this internal part of it is just, more of a short-term until we see what happens long-term. So I think that takes us to current day. There are questions about what we just went through. Models, again, we just wanted to level set and kind of remind everyone. I will tell you from a timing standpoint, we're up against the timeline. The high school edition, it doesn't look like it now, but there's a lot of work that's going on with that now. And that high school edition where you see takes it up another 150 students. That will open in August. So there's a lot of work being done. One of the things that we're doing right now is, and we have to get back to the curriculum committee and eventually the entire board, but we're looking how the entire high school will be used when it has the addition. One of the things that we're planning now is we're trying to model the high school when it has 700 students and how we would best serve students in the building. So that might be moving some classrooms around so that if we add part of the wing, this is not literal, so don't hang on to it, but we might move science so it's more organized, or there might be some things that we can do long term. The other thing we're doing is evaluating our career tech programs. We ended up with a multi-skilled technician in electrical trades. Both of those programs are going very well. Very proud of both of those. And we're in some preliminary discussions right now about a health science pathway that'd be like a biomedical, and potentially being able to offer that next year, that it becomes possible with the building addition. What that, and this is all preliminary, so like I said, the board will be working on this more with the administration. But what that looks at is possibly a state-tested nursing assistant program, maybe some pharmacology in there, like I said, some biomedicine, some different pathways for students. But we've done some surveying, and we're just closing that, and it is very strong in some of those areas on the health pathways, or like I said, health science pathway. And we actually have met with CTEC, and they did some of the build-out before, so this would be a collaboration with them as well too. So a lot to come there, and all good stuff with our schools. So we're very proud of all So anyways, we're up against the time, and like I said, our high school edition will be constructed on time, and we're planning for that academically and programmatically. We literally have to get a shovel in the ground. We're much later than we expected. We need it next month in order to be able to open this facility up, at least the core building, for wrestling, which is going to be our, we'll have some for cheerleading, but they have some more alternatives in wrestling. We need to get a shovel in the ground in February. If we're beyond that, then we're off a year, or we're going to have to do something mid-season, which I don't think would be advantageous to anyone. So, again, Sean, do you want to jump in at this point and talk about anything with the city and what we're looking for? Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely.
Being involved with the wrestling program for 100 years is probably closer to 10 or 12. Kind of watched it go through the process, looked at the space. And I just want to, I know we've discussed this, but I just want the public to know that a North Campus building will have a dramatic impact on participation. When I'm able to be at practice when the high school kids come down, because the season is now, for the last few weeks, and we're talking red noses, pink cheeks, bundled up. They're walking, not exposed to the highways. They can kind of go through the neighborhoods, which is somewhat of a safer route. If we have to walk across town, your kids that are beginning school, 7th graders, 9th graders, 10th graders, before they have the opportunity to get skills and become successful, the walk is going to be too much of a burden. I fear that they will just not participate. So anything we can do to bring that onto the city property or adjacent to the school building is going to have a major impact on participation, both short term and long term. If we do end up on a North Campus, is there any way to work in some type of transportation from the middle school or high school to that facility? That could be an option that would help out with football. Snow, cold, crossing the highway, kids being in a hurry, cold, running. It's a recipe for disaster. Even if kids do participate. I just want to put that out there for the public to kind of understand what it means to the wrestling program to be adjacent to campus. Really any program, it's just wrestling happens to be the one.
I'd like to follow up with the same kind of comments, being very much involved in the JYAA youth sports program, that because wrestling is in the barn, if you will, and other high school sports, then it limits the recreational teams to have practice time, development time in there, and I'm all about some youth being involved in something other than just school, because that's what makes our community such a great community, is that many of our kids are involved in something with or outside of school, and it all starts at a very young age, and that's where JYAA comes in, because they are starting at age 4 and 5, and with freeing up space in the barn at Belt Park, it allows for activities to go on right after school, where parents may be at home and they can get their child to additional programming. So it's twofold. It's not just for the kids that are in the school program, but the younger age group coming right out after. I can speak from experience that kids with something to do are much less expensive than asking the police and the juvenile justice system.
So, all good points, thank you. And I know we've talked a lot as a school district as well about wanting to make sure this comes together. I think we're close on the purchase aspect, but it's how do we manage the lease and all. I will tell you, and I said this at the council meeting when I was there on behalf of the district, that property, your property is important to us for long-range planning as well too. When you see 4 buildings to 6, there's things we don't talk about publicly because we're trying to work some different objectives here. But the idea is try to have a centralized campus. That is our objective. Otherwise, we feel as though it's not as efficient, and then we're also possibly spending monies we don't want to, like to try and replicate that stadium, like to move a new high school off this campus, or not at least being close. Maybe it doesn't have to be adjacent, but close. You're talking about replicating costs that probably don't need to be. So that's, honestly, and I said this at the council meeting, it's not that the building per se is that important. It's the property and the ability to future plan. Sean, anything you want to bring up from the city?
Sure, I can add a little bit.
Sean, can you give him the mic a little bit too, so we can, so the public.
There you go. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I'll add just a few items, and I appreciate Dr. Wagner and Craig putting together the presentation, carrying the water on that, kind of a recap on where we were, where we presently are, and then hopefully where we're looking to go. As Dr. Wagner mentioned, I think looking at having a liaison committee, so that way we can drill down into some of those details that I think a lot of you are bringing up tonight. And these are really great questions. But at the moment, the lease that was presented the last council meeting obviously have some challenges associated with it. I don't know that it will be functional in its current format. So we would need to either A, look at exploring a different scenario for feedback to the township. We offered that conversation at the last council meeting where we would potentially sit down, understand their needs a little bit better, Dr. Wagner, myself, understanding their needs as well as our needs, and seeing if we could meld those together. We obviously explored, I think, what was the path of least resistance. What we felt, I think Dr. Wagner and myself, when we were looking at exploring the sale of the sale of the building and purchase from the school, it aligned really well. There was just one caveat. So if that one does not fall into place, what are some additional options that may not be as enticing as the first one, but could be at least an alternative that we could fall back to, or even having a phased approach. And we've had some general conversations. There may be an opportunity to where we could still put that building there, but we could have some phased in approaches, but understanding what timing the school needed to have for the initial building, as well as some of those lean-to associated structures. So those are the things that I'll add at this moment, but I'm open for questions. I did some square footage explorations with our current facility, and I have our police department having a current square footage of right around 5,100 square feet. So anything less than that would obviously be a reversal and moving backwards. So that would be challenging. I think the administrative office, what we're looking at for our needs, currently we're right around 2,000, 2,100. Build out, moving our offices into some of what the police would vacate would give us probably 4,000. So if we're looking for our 5-10 year range plan for our offices, we're hoping to have somewhere between 3,000 to 4,000 square feet. Talk to Chief Smart and his projections for the police needs, given that they're at 5,100, 7,000 would maybe get them over the next 5, possibly 10 years. But then obviously having a larger conversation on scaling that up, depending on obviously how fast growth happens. And I think Dr. Wagner did a fantastic job of outlining the projection numbers that they have. MKSK is currently running some numbers on our future land use map associated with it. I think in the first conversation I had with our planning team, looks like our numbers align with our future land use map and their current student population. Some things can upset that particular scenario, depending on types of housing. That can obviously add or subtract kids depending on that type of housing. So, and the densities that are associated with it. Right now, I think we have a pretty good alignment, and I'd like to keep that alignment moving forward. But
So this, sorry.
Sure.
The square footage requirements are based on projected location.
The current police department is 5,100 square feet. When talking to the chief, and we had talked about obviously the leasing of the old firehouse, it's roughly 7,000, 8,000, depending on if you want to include the upstairs or downstairs. Looking at that, he felt that would be a good space for potentially the next 5 to possibly 10 years. Having that crystal ball on how quickly development will happen is challenging at the moment, but you do the best you can. So that was his projections. I could obviously have him fill you in a little bit more. I think that's probably looked at from an officer hiring count. Yep. And then evidence rooms, training facilities. Right now, it's problematic for them to do any training. So they sometimes use council chambers. If you did build a wrestling facility, I'm sure maybe our police would want to utilize that for some of their training exercise. But there's a lot of shared uses that I think could combine nicely. So I think where we're at right now is understanding maybe the committee's goals that we're looking to have it accomplish. Dr. Wagner put it into A, B, C, and D. I think there's some non-starters that we could identify at the very beginning. That group could, and then we could obviously look at cost constraints. What are our current real financials? What's the school's financials? How those all can fold into possibly a solution. It does create some additional challenges if we're not able to use the firehouse, but I think all of us here are wanting to still continue the exercise. And I think we can still continue the exercise to explore that space, but we also need to be very realistic that the school district has a large presence and a site that's very close to the cities. It's much easier for us to move our facility than it would be for them to move their campus. And if this is something that folds into their long-term plans, then we are obviously making an effort on our end to see how we can accommodate, but also see how that shared space and shared utilities and shared uses can overlap in some capacity. So not wanting to discount all of the fire building just at this moment, but having the realization we may need to have some backup plans in place. And then I think that small group would work together, come up with maybe 5 scenarios, bring that back to the bodies as a whole, see if this is something that would work. Goals they say.
While our committees are doing that, is the school board and the city council receptive of sending Dr. Wagner, Mr. Snyder, and trying to get Mr. Fox and the fire chief together and come up with a list of needs that everyone needs, and maybe create a solution where all 4 of us can go in like a storage facility or something that all of us can contribute to, and create one area that all of us can be part of and solve some of our needs. Therefore, maybe make it a firehouse more easily.
Yeah, I said to Sean, I mean, for my part is, I guess I'm the school district's part of this. I'd almost break it into 2 pieces. Can we get the sale of the building taken care of so that at least we can get our building built? I'm not trying to dramatize, guys, but if we can't, I mean, we're up against it. Next month, if we get outside of February, that building won't be ready for wrestling. And then do we look at this in 2 pieces? We know, if we can agree to just the core building, maybe there's an option where we could fit the lean-to in a different configuration. I said to Sean today, is it a T on the end? I don't even know if any of that's possible. If we look at options. But I said to Sean today, I feel like, I shouldn't say I feel like, I know the school board, we've been working on it. It's been since September that we got this heavy in this discussion, and we're still sitting here, guys, and it's almost the end of January. We can't wait any longer. So can we break this into 2 pieces? Can we do I think there seemed to be universal agreement about the sale of the building, but we just have to figure out how we get to that second piece about the wrestling, the cheerleading, indoor batting. One of the things I said to Sean today, just throwing everything on the table, and I think our committee needs to look at this, is what maybe the schools need to rent the firehouse, and that would give us at least 2 years to get the wrestling and cheerleading in that space too. That doesn't help the police, but those are the kind of things that we need to think about. And although we want to help the police, maybe that gets pushed back a couple of years. I'm not saying that's the answer, but when we talk about different options, like we're starting to talk about things too, like what else do we have in front of us that could work? But we've got to get that building built. It cannot be dramatic. If we don't get that, we're going to go to the North Campus. As much as I appreciate Ms. Bursini and others said, but we have nowhere else to go.
Since Dr. Wagner is showing some of his cards as far as alternative options with the firehouse, we also discussed what's the streets department space in that particular building, and measuring that out. We've talked about in the past, years ago, adding some additional space to the street department. Is it possible to take out the street department and still have enough space for the cheerleading and wrestling? I think current calculations right now show that would be challenging. But I think the exploration of this needs to start happening now. Then is it a conversation where we can maybe split the difference? Maybe we can have half the street department or all of the street department taken away. They can put the singular wrestling program in that space, and then have the cheerleading be an attachment to the to the multi-purpose building that they're looking at, and then have it in a way that they could phase that multi-purpose building. Maybe if we're able to talk to some neighboring property owners. Seems like we need a longer runway and we don't have that time. So we're trying to figure out how we can creatively extend that runway without impeding the ability for this multi-purpose building, the core structure, without the lean-to to take place. So we're going to put our creative hats on and come up with some ideas. And that's kind of one of the goals of this meeting, is to let you know, obviously to get your permission to walk through the rest of this exercise as a committee. If you all are instructing this liaison committee to kind of take some of these task items up, we're willing to meet. Dr. Wagner and myself are willing to meet. I believe it would be attended by school board participants as well. But we need to get cracking on it pretty quickly, so that way we can have some alternative options and really, like Dr. Wagner said, break it up into two groups. One is having the alternatives conversation, and we can explore the alternatives with the township, but I don't want to wait on their response before we start doing some other additional work.
Well, Sean, I think not to,
No, absolutely.
the duration of the lease and the square footage they gave you, I think it's pretty clear the police aren't in their future over at the fire. I think they made that clear, at least, it's pretty clear to me. So I do think we're at this point where we're either going to build the building over here and then work out where the lean-to goes, and then what that does to everybody else if we do it. If it's okay, police are going to stay in the building and not be affected, and then that's more of a long-term plan for council to look at what happens to them as they expand. Being realistic, I think that's our only option at this point, is try to build the building where it fits next to your city hall, and find other space for the lean-to. And we're down to 2 or 3 different options. I really do believe what Dr. Wagner said. The school may want to take that lease that the township offered you, and gives us a little room. That way, if this is trailing a little bit, if it's trailing, yeah.
At least they will.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, we may be willing to look at that 2 years, because if we can get the core building built and then put those auxiliary, that lean-to sports up into that building for 2 years, it gives us time to come together on the other plan for the relocation. Or, I mean, I don't want to go into every detail. I mean, there's so many things we can do. We may end up tearing down the back area. We've got that little garage where the school board was. There's a lot of other options out there that we can explore. But I'd hate to keep holding this whole thing up over a lean-to. I mean, that's essentially where we're at. I think from everyone here, everyone's agreed that we can kind of come to terms with everything else. I'd like to just go ahead and move forward with everything, get this little group together and figure out where what I'll call the lean-to activities go to, and just move forward.
I trust that our committees are going to come up with an answer, and that we need to move forward. Moving forward is top priority. But I trust the school district. I trust our council that we can work together and find a solution for that smaller issue that we need to stick with.
What have you been doing as a council to think creatively? I don't know how to phrase that exactly, but I know in our behalf, we've thought, well, why don't they think about this, or have they thought about that? What are you thinking? Have you looked at, if we broke up the different departments that we currently exist under one roof, is that doable, or is that a no-no, or can you build another building yourself close? All I can think of is the water and sewer department. I'm sorry, Jack, but I don't know what fits with what, because your hierarchy better than I. But what can you do? What if we put a building there now, but it doesn't really fit exactly our plan? How do we move forward? How do we get past the encumbrances? If you don't have Plan B or Plan C, how can we go forward? I'm worrying about that. I'm not worrying. I'm concerned about it. Excuse the dark glasses. That's because I've had eye stuff. But anyway, I just want us to be able to. I'd like to see I'm excited about helping with the committee, but I also want some clear-cut ideas of how creative you are. If you can give some good input, the committee can be very strong and help you come back to it. But all of us can reach a conclusion. I think we've established, A, the board's interested in the building. B, the price is where we think we can make it work in our budget. C, we have time constraints. How can we take those time constraints and turn them into positives? And I keep hearing the same kinds of dialogue and narrative, and I think that's great, but we probably beat that cow to death. Let's try to find something else. What have you looked internally that you can do to find a solution? Is it building a barns or a building somewhere on your land, or is it another piece of ground? I know I keep hearing pieces of ground around Johnstown that may be available, but somebody else has a first option. Is that communication going forward? I don't want to mention what it is because I don't know enough to mention what it is. But what do you think? How are you thinking creatively? Because we certainly are. We've been on the North Campus. We've drawn our picture, what we need. We've looked at our student population. We're looking at curriculum. Where are you? Help the committee be good to you. Help us bring back good ideas.
I'll jump into that. And we obviously have a lot of constraints. So as far as creativity goes, there's minimal options to explore due to some of the financial constraints that we have. So before we went down this exercise, and we knew that there was obviously some challenges associated with the firehouse, we really took an effort to explore what are the alternatives, what could we do creatively to reconfigure some things. But with the financial constraints that we have, it sometimes creates limited options. And so that's what we ran into a little bit. I think building a new facility would be fantastic, but that also requires a large sum of money. We have land in some situations that we could put a new facility. I don't think land is the option. I think it's the actual building of the facility. So as I mentioned earlier, we're looking at the possibility of the street department consolidating, maybe organizing that a little bit more, talking to the chief, having segments of his operation separated was a non-starter. He knows his operation far more than any of us, and so I trust his advice on that. So obviously checking that one off, not exploring that any further. So I think that's why we're here, is there are limited options that are available, but I think if you all have your numbers and you're sharing those, that the lean-to is something that maybe has a little bit longer runway, aside from the actual first structure, the gymnasium, that's going to be helpful for us. So this is terrific, and I think this is an exercise where we're learning more about your timeframes, and then we're just sharing as much as we can with you all. It's not going to be a solution that we don't come to without working together on, obviously. So.
Can I get committee started?
Yeah, I'm good. I mean, I'm ready to move. I think we move on the building. We look at the lean-to. I really think this schools probably end up in the firehouse, and we use it for some of our stuff here short term while we come up with a long-term plan for the lean-to. But I'm always open to if you guys can work out a better deal and get that. But it's not looking likely from everything I've seen was presented.
Mr. Swager, really the only option I think that we would be able to present to the township is finding them an additional piece of land that would be suitable for them to do some type of long-range expansion. Obviously, having that conversation with them, what land that we have, it would be available. I would love to pursue a joint safety facility with potentially the police and the fire department locating in one centralized area. Obviously, they have their large firehouse there, but if they have a secondary station, could our police presence be there as well? That'll give us a nice long runway. Having that shared facility where you have shared workout facilities, shared parking spaces, I think has a lot of positive outcomes for both parties involved. Obviously, the land would be a conversation, and if that services their long-term needs, and they're allowed to put this short-term situation maybe a little bit further down the road, that's really the only play I think we have is presenting that to them and saying, hey, is this an option that you would explore? If it's not, we're doing our due diligence. You're absolutely right. I think we've got to continue to find out how we can get this done because of the importance of it. Mr. Orsini, you know the wrestling program, and everybody I think echoes it. Having that one campus design is going to be way more beneficial, way more efficient for the school for successful programs than it is if you've got to put a off-site campus. So.
Fair to point out what's big group as we sit down. The wrestling program is way and everything is going to find hard opportunities to get them out so that in every turn it's always very good, but lesser good the rest of the
I was just going to say, I think with what we're thinking about, we might even have to have an interim staff. We're trying to, and maybe there's something we do for a couple years. It's not going to be ideal, but would it be a better accommodation? Would there be water,
Yeah, that's
access to a toilet, restaurant facilities? I think we might have to do something like that. What I like about the discussion is if we can break it apart, because then if we can look at the purchase, like I said, we've all talked for the most part.
I agree with the, from the very beginning, let's just always go to the spreadsheet.
Okay.
We're in a really unique situation right now. I think we all have confidence of it. We have this great opportunity to really think of the future and plan strategically for that, which I don't think the school has ever been in that situation, right now, the city, or the township for that matter. And we need to know about it. We need to really do this right and get it right for, not just 5 years, but 20 to 30 years. Long term, what is the best solution for every entity, not just one? And it's not the city bowing down to the school. It's not the school school getting the upper hand on anything. It's what's best for this community as a whole. Holistically, what are we doing right for everyone involved? Whether you have kids in school or don't have kids in school. We all owe it to each other to do the right thing for everyone else. So I agree. We need to separate the issues, get the purchase complete, and push ourselves to get this completed.
We have a school board meeting. Our next formal one is February 10th. And then I don't know what you have set on council.
February 3rd.
It would be really nice if we could get that purchase taken care of. We could schedule it. We'd have to change the purchase agreement if I could modify that, because we heard some components in that.
Inside the purchase agreement, there's a contingency in place. The police department is able to find an alternative space. If we were to rewrite that in a way that the police department's able to stay there, obviously that creates. I'll let the school board speak for what that presents for you all. If the police department were to stay there, your facility needs better than we do. I could tell you what the street department exists in that space, and if that would be enough. Dr. Wagner and I have had some real quick conversations, and it looks like that may be constrained. However, a purchase contract would occur, but it would have to have language changed in it to allow the police department to remain there, unless, like I said, we're able to find them a last-minute situation. But we've got to continue to truck forward here with this.
I agree with you, Dr. too, that there may be like an interim process that we have to do here in transition, and change is uncomfortable, and growth is uncomfortable, and we may spend a couple of years uncomfortable and cramped, but long term, or what are we looking for? Is best long term. I would hate to make decisions based on that uncomfortable couple of years that aren't in the best interest of 30 years from now. So, and I think it's going to take some trust on both parties to know that we're going to do what's right, even if it's uncomfortable.
We have a date, your absolute drop dead date. What the decision has been made.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks
Ago.
I honestly, no, we haven't. It's got to be in February sometime, but I mean, we're really up against it even with that. And that's assuming all the permitting goes that needs to, that some of that goes through the city anyways.
The problem with this, it's a great opportunity for the kids, for the community, for everybody involved. Not against that at all. We're not going anywhere in the property. I think it's a great spot to be able to put the school over there. The problem with this, I guess I was the one that said an opinion on the council, we put the cart way out. And I agree with Becky, the deal on the building. We've spent about 4 months on this now, coming together, and I don't want to hold you guys up. I don't want to hold up, the normal flow of our city for all the services that we offer. It would be a great deal if we can really figure this out. I just want to make sure that we're not holding you guys up because the plan that you guys have here is also a great plan. And I think you don't want to miss out. So if we can get something done, I'll proceed. I don't want to hold things up when the cart's full of works.
Can we get the language drafted and done?
By the 3rd? Yeah, we can work on it. I think we were going to talk to on the liaison committee. I think it's Mrs. Hollis.
Fourth.
Good one. And the two of you, right? As well, too. And then Sean, just got Friday.
Yeah, I mean, I can meet Thursday or Friday this week if we want to meet this
It'd be
week.
nice if we could get our committee together.
Friday, we have a meeting. I'm already taking a half day off Friday, so. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What day is it?
Friday.
So both our groups are wanting to move forward. with
We're
this,
meeting.
make this happen.
Yeah.
So just let's get it done.
Well, there is some language in the first proposal on the lease agreement that we need to discuss, and I know that's kind of the elephant in the room, but it's been discussed among board members, and I think that's something we have to bring forward because I'll just say it, the 15 years is a problem for me. Tying up.
You're going to give us 20?
I was thinking lifetime, but go ahead, limit yourself. No, honestly, would you buy something on a 15-year maybe basis and if you whatever, and I read that language, it just doesn't work for me. So I'm going to just step forward and tell you. Now, I do know I'm not alone in that feeling or that opinion, but to just not address that initially, I think we're probably spending time that we don't want to spend. And we don't want to have a split board or a split anything when we come back together, right? Don't want that. So I think realistically, it takes 3 to 5 years to build a building. For you, I understand that. I've been in that situation myself. So I understand that, but to linger something or have tentacles for 15 years is more than I want to do because I will not ever obligate a future school board. I don't want to obligate a discussion that obviously seems flawed in its current language state. So
I think the 15 years before we were to see this whole thing.
I never saw 10.
No, but I'm
didn't
saying I
see
think 10 is the
15.
goal.
I did see 15. But I'm not even sure about the 10. I think 5 is
Right now, under our current climate, getting over
I'm sorry?
We can't replace what we had. But
Well, if we don't think creatively, you're sure right. You can. But it depends on, we break things apart and then we put them back together. It's all, our life is a puzzle. So you take it apart, you say, what can we do? How badly do we want it? Is there a piece of ground over here? Is there this over there? Where's our opportunity? I don't know. I'm just saying, get the juices going because we really need to do that. But probably not. I don't have any intention of reproducing the house I lost before. But I know, in other words, it was $10,000.
downside.
Maybe you're not downsizing. Maybe you're just reorganizing. I don't know what that looks like, Bob, but I am not one who goes into any debate or any, that's not the right word, any opportunity to bring the community and the school and all the things that we're talking about. Nobody wants to destroy that. We want to enhance it. But how do we do that if we don't think, how can we play that role? What does it look like? I don't know. I'd like to hear a positive, crazy idea. I'm sure you've heard of storybook. I have in all the generations that I've worked. So let's talk about storyboarding. How does that look? Don't throw out a good idea. Examine a good idea. Can it work? Can it not work? So we've been laboring. I think that's good.
That's where it starts.
I think you're right, Jeff.
And the issue is if it's not feasible for you to get out of there in 10 years, then we need to really look at what else can we do with that other building, right? As Tim alluded to, we could find another location on our site to build that that lean-to. It may not be really a lean-to structure, it may be a separate structure. But I think there's other opportunities that we can look at. If you tell us realistically that you can't get out of there for 10 years, then we need to look at what else can we do, right? Where else can we plan? And that's why we really need guidance from you as to what's possible, right? And we're willing to look at what's possible to accommodate that, right? Because we want to make it work for everyone in the community, right? So that's the question. Lean-to doesn't necessarily have to be next to the building. That would be ideal, or in that same general area. But if that's not possible, then we need to look at what else can happen. Where else can we go? And there are other options. But to keep everything on the same campus is really what we're trying to do here, because we also have a gym, right? So basketball, right? We want the students to be able to walk from the middle school. We don't want them walking across town, right? We have all these needs for practice times where we have our students practicing late at night. That's not ideal academically to get them out of here late at night. So anything we can do to keep everything on the same campus and make it more advantageous for our students to get to programs, as Jeff said, we need to have opportunities for our students and make it so that it works for not only the students, but their families, right?
The problem that we've run into in the city is the lack of revenue. And until a tax is passed or development occurs, the revenue is a struggle. Without the revenue, we can't build something else at its point without straddling our system with debt. So it's multi-phase that we've got to get the additional revenue. And that's the plan of having 10 years is get that revenue, get that building built, have time. I mean, under the current climate, the citizens have voted twice no to the tax revenue. So we've got to figure out something to do that.
Well, I also would reiterate what two other board members said, was that I have concerns about entering into a contract that's 15 years for a lease. I was surprised about that. I shared that with Dr. Wagner, that I'm surprised about 15 years. I know it's 5 years and then renewable to 2 more 5 years. But when we're looking at purchasing a building now or land, we're looking for the immediate need to take something and build or bring it into our resources of whatever we need it for at that time. And another thing that I would like to say is when I hear, and I respect what you said about the different campuses, but if they will not walk to JYAA, why will they walk to the front if you put in an auxiliary gym to handle the rest? They still have to walk there on their own, and they'd be walking to the high school or the middle school. Is it? I thought he was referencing to going to JYAA, the red noses.
It's a challenge
now. I see.
It's a third.
Well, they would be walking in the majority of the school sidewalks where we can actually clean them, where they're not walking today.
And they'd have a restroom when they got there.
They would have a restroom when they got there. I mean, if we're going to build it and they still won't go to it, I can't help them. I can't. They still are going to have to walk from the high school or the gym, the high school or the middle school over to the building. And I'm not being nasty about that. Yeah.
You couldn't build a facility as before. So there is the distance of the village. I mean,
I'm very upset about
it is
where they're
not
at.
from a lack of effort, because I know there's been many gyrations over the years, many efforts over the years to find a facility, including different arrangements. But as we sit here today, I mean, whatever you could possibly, if you would just roll mats out in the police garage as it sits, it would be at half the distance. The kids see the other programs, and they see locker rooms, and they see lockers with kids' name on them. They see all this stuff, and then they get told, you're down the road there. See when you get there, the porta potties out front. They do a pretty good job keeping it clean, but wind blows it over, the door open. You got to go outside, in shorts and a t-shirt. I mean,
It's less than ideal. We shouldn't have that at this time. I understand that. And the same with our
if you
soccer.
would build one by the city going, I mean, you're walking from, I don't know, what's 100 feet for the middle school, or maybe 200 for the high school.
We were thinking about developing the North Campus, no, I apologize, about putting the auxiliary gym at the North Campus with the lean-to, it would house the wrestling, cheerleading, and then also we would have facilities for the soccer that was going down at the facility, or the old middle school football field. And then whoever else would be using that. I mean, it's not exclusive to those two sports or
That
three
would work for
sports.
me if you could have.
There would be locker rooms, there would be.
Well, that seems a reasonable answer, so I
Pretty
think
sure
we
buses
just
go that
already
way,
storyboarded what
Yes,
could
there
we
is a
do.
bus that, I mean, I think there's 3 buses going down that way, and they could drop.
Yeah,
That's
okay. I was gonna digress a minute too. When you brought wrestling to us maybe 5 years ago, forgive me if that's been longer or shorter, I don't know how many longer, okay. At that time, you had a group of parents who were really quite interested in initiating the program, having the school take it over. And they were going to assist with fundraising and possibly building a building. Have you communicated with the wrestling parents to see if they have any ideas what might work?
I don't recall a committee of parents, of concerned parents about dropping the program. I recall that. We did try to work with JYJ and support it on their own building for years.
Okay.
It just hasn't come to fruition.
Okay.
Can I get the independent funding from the wrestling community? No, I mean, they never own the property, fundraise to build it where we have to go to the property, the school standards, now we're looking at that's significantly more expensive. We go to
I get it. I
JYAA.
just was curious.
They've got other concerns about the use of the building, mats up and down, and rolling up and destroying the mats.
I was just interested if you had explored that and if the parents had any input at this point, that's all.
The parents don't like what they have, so I'll do what I get.
I'll bet. We agree.
Well, the good thing is, I don't think any of these challenges or opportunities are insurmountable. I think, as far as getting a lease and that we can all agree to, it's workable. Everything here, we all know this is the right thing as a group. We all know we need the building. We all know that all this has to happen. It's just getting the details worked out. I'm confident the two boards can get together and finish this and rather quickly. So I do appreciate it.
I was just going to say that, I mean, the township did bring an offer, regardless of how we want to view it as an individual, whether it's viable or not. It is movement, and I think we need to look at it from a positive perspective that the township knows that we're going to continue down this thing. That may fall into place with being able to get into that building for our PD. So I hope that we do our part with the township trustees and anybody else that has influence. We can talk to them. I hope that we can continue down that path in your time to work something out with them too, because that's still on the table. It's not off.
Yeah. The funeral you were talking about on Friday, is that in the morning?
11.
So we have, yeah, that's, or we didn't, I was waiting for the details. We have some committee meetings scheduled for Friday in the afternoon, but we can move any of those if we need to. So is there a time where the 3 council members and Sean and me, we were kind of sidebarring over here just on the calendars. So is there a time on Friday afternoon we can get together? I think the objective would be 2 parts is, can we get this lease language, get the purchase language organized, and then we start looking at our second aspect would be what do we do for lease options, and that could be around township, it could be other different options.
As far as
we could do as early as 12:30 is what we were talking about. Yeah, I'm gonna
Anytime,
release-
12:30 on.
that's something you can use.
So, do you think the funeral parade wants to be done by 12:30?
We didn't have to move the meeting.
So if we did,
12:30 to 1:30.
yeah, Sean, what if we did 12:30, 1:30? Okay. Then if you need, the schools are good at writing notes, so if you need some help on that 2 o'clock appointment, we can write you a
think we
note,
can start.
I'll give you an excuse. So yeah, we could try 12:30, and then your council meeting is Tuesday, the 3rd. is that
Next
correct?
Tuesday.
4th, I'm sorry. So I like to propose too that if we're successful on Friday, that we're getting a purchase agreement, maybe separate from the lease, but we'll break apart those two to the council on the 3rd, and we can have our board meeting on the 10th. No, I'm sorry, the 4th for you, and then the 10th for us, and then we could actually get that part of it done. If that's moving forward, we can even start to tell our construction team if they don't have to wait for the final, just for them to start to stage things. Does that sound acceptable to everyone? I know we're not formally voting, but where would you like to? Do you want me to here? We meet in the schools? All right, we'll come to city hall. It doesn't matter to us. We'll do whatever we need. Council chambers.
Council chambers.
Yeah, but we can meet in my office. We have different, because we use that as a conference room too. We got all
Chamber.
Yeah, let's do that.
Easier to park over there.
And then that way, if we have to look at the building, if we can take a field trip if we need to. So we'll do 12:30, 1:30 on Friday, and then reverse engineering this, maybe moving forward to reverse, but then we'll look at council meeting on the 4th. We'll have to get with our legal counsel if all goes well on Friday, and then also then the board on Monday the 10th. I'm sorry, yeah, Monday, February 10th. Yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 Monday the 10th. I keep thinking yours is Monday, that's why I keep saying February 3rd. It's really Tuesday the 4th. Wonder if we can get something, we've been doing our collaborative meetings, wonder if we can get the 4 of us on the phone here or Zoom or something, Teams maybe before Friday, we can start to rough out some things so the committee has something to look at. Okay. And then our other objective, like I said, just put some more teeth to it, will be looking at all kinds of options we have, trying to get that lean to, including maybe if we had to do something that's even an interim for the wrestling, cheerleading, and all too.
Maybe that's something everyone should plan on bringing to the meeting, so we can take some time.
Yeah.
Brainstorm up in the list.
Yeah. So I'll send an invite out for 12:30. Council chambers, Teresa, you'll reserve them. Okay. Good.
For me.
Good. Any other business for council? Yeah, any other business?
Executive session to talk about county lease.
Talk about with the schools or?
No.
Okay,
That's why.
yeah. You can have this room. That would be.
I was just going to say, we can just go through ours and adjourn, and then you guys could go into executive and stay in here, if that's your desires.
If we get those for executive session. I'd like to make a motion. Sale. At the close of the school board's meeting. Do I need to say that? You can waive your emergency executive session, which I can call. Hearing the information presented by Councilman Barbar, I would recommend the council go into executive session and waive your rules. Is that- Make the motion based on everything Sean.
I'll second it.
Dave second.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
other comments for you guys? Anything from the school board? If I can get a motion to adjourn?
So moved. I'll second.
Call the roll.
I was looking for you to move, Dan.
Mrs. Boulder? Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis? Yes. Mrs. Thomas? Yes.
Meeting is adjourned at 6:22. Thank you. And I do want to thank the city council and members and Sean for agreeing to come over this forward. I really appreciate it.